Welcome back to the Not Yet Now podcast. We are having a full circle moment here, Jill.
Yes, we are.
So we got my beautiful daughter, Layla.
What's up, guys?
And her wonderful husband, Dawson Skinner. The Skinner family is in the house.
Yes, we are.
Layla Skinner.
You know,
Yeah, it's kind of weird still saying that. You
I
guys have
know.
been married a year and a half.
Year and a half.
Congratulations.
Yep. Disclaimer: we do not have all the answers.
We are not here to give all of our marriage advice.
Yeah. I think, being married a year and a half, we have a story and we have an experience that, I pray resonates with people, but we are not experts. We are here to learn from the big leaves. We're the little
We're the
leagues.
best of the
I
best.
was going to say, we're not experts either. We're going to
we have been married
caveat that.
24
But yes.
years, so that's
And
something.
I think we still love each other.
We do love each
Better
other.
in
Although we got in a
experience.
big fight last night, the whole family had a big family knockdown drag out last night, knowing we were going to record this morning at 9 a.m. So Jill wakes me up
Let's
at
just
like,
get that elephant out of the room.
yeah. So Jill wakes me up early and she says, "You want to get coffee?" Because we kind of went to bed last night with a family feud, which and at the end of it, I was like, how do we get into this? It's like I don't even know. How
It was
this
not a
happened.
big deal,
No,
but
it was stupid.
It was so
But we have a
silly.
lot of passionate personalities. Literally, it was Max, Bear, Layla, me, and Jill. That
A lot
was
of
the,
a lot of
And
emotions.
Fred and
were
Dawson
laid
are
out.
just-
Dawson. I
Dawson
told
was-
Zach this morning, and I was like, how thankful are you for Dawson? Seriously, the Lord handpicked you for our family, not just for Layla,
Yeah.
but because we needed you.
yeah.
But no, in all seriousness, full circle moment, we prayed for this from the time I found out I was pregnant with you. We started praying for you. And my word,
You're gonna cry.
tear up. That means Shane's going to send you this video. Okay. We have a friend that sends Zach a clip of every time I get emotional on the podcast.
Yeah, anything awkward Jill does, he like Snapchat. he, like,
But
snaps
I
it.
No
do want to
pressure.
start off with that because I believe that prayer matters. And one of the greatest things that we can do as parents is to pray for our children and for their spouses. And we've done that for
Your whole life.
your whole life. And so today's going to look a little different than normally our podcast. People send in questions. This is going to be around marriage and engagement. And, like y'all are newly married. We've been married a little bit longer. And some of the questions we'll get to, some we'll get to the next week when we've got Max and Annabelle in the hot seat. But all of that to say, we are not experts. This is our experience. We are trying to live lives followed by the Holy Spirit. And that is where
Yeah.
our answers are going to come from.
Yeah.
So with that, why don't you guys just give us a little Cliff Note version of your story?
we are high school sweethearts. Met freshman year of high school English class, and we actually were friends all throughout high school. I remember being in high school and like I had the biggest crush on Dawson, honestly, the whole way through. But I also, dated a few other people, kind of, did some other things. And the entire time I like would look at Dawson and be like, that's the kind of guy I actually like. I really want to be with that kind of guy.
I
But
think throughout high school, whenever she was dating someone, I was single, and then whenever she was single, I was dating someone.
so that.
So the stars aligned senior year.
Yes, stars aligned senior
And,
year.
and you have to. The term dating is a very loose term.
Yes.
I was pretty strict on.
That is true.
Yeah.
Which we'll talk about that with Max and Anna.
There
Yes.
are other friends involved.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially
Yeah, if you're looking for specific dating, like how we navigated that'll be next week.
Stay tuned.
So stay tuned. Yeah.
But we met, high school, didn't start dating till our senior year of high school. And then from there, started dating, ended up going to college together. And then I moved to Nashville to pursue music. Dawson actually ended up moving back here for a little bit and then eventually got a job and moved to Nashville and joined me, I guess. And then
Just followed you everywhere.
and then then we got engaged September. Our engagement was 3 months. And then we got married in December on New Year's Eve.
And
the
y'all were
rest is history.
young. You were young getting married. You got married. You were 20. I was 20 when we got
Yeah.
married. You were
Yeah.
23. You were.
I was
what?
21 by like a week and a half, maybe.
Okay, so
Maybe.
talk about that a little bit because some people would be like, "What? Why did you get married so young?" And
Well, so I had moved to Nashville I think this summer, so Layla was back, so I was by myself, but I was moving there because Layla and I knew like we want to get married, we want to be together, and we're kind of tired of doing this thing where like we're, you know, in Lynchburg or we're in Asheville or in Nashville and we're in all these places together, but at every single night or in the afternoon, like we have to go our separate ways and do our own thing. It's like, why not just figure it out together? Because we didn't have it figured out. I had no money in my bank account and Layla was in college, but we're like, why? Like we're already pursuing this thing together but separately. So why can't we just do it like together and be on the same mission where we're at home every night together and we're able to like build this life.
Join forces.
Yeah, and join forces and build a life instead of just sitting there like she's at college and, you know, I'm back home and we're texting every night.
Especially in Nashville, like we would go about our day, like he would work and then I would do my thing and then we would go on a date and, you know, we have all these awesome conversations and then, you know, 10, 11 p.m. it's like, good night.
Time to bounce.
We're already doing it broke. Why not do it broke,
But I knew I wanted to be with him and he knew he wanted to be with me.
So how did you know that? Because that's a lot that we got several questions that specifically asked, you know, what are things you should know before getting engaged, or what are some questions you should ask each other before? I mean, obviously, how did you come to the knowledge that this was the person for me?
I think we had a lot of conversations when we were like throughout all of dating. It wasn't just like one conversation or one thing here and there. Like I remember when we first started dating, we went on a date up on the Blue Ridge Parkway to like an overlook. And I remember sitting with Layla and I was like, these are the things that I like, if we're going to pursue this, like I want to pursue this for marriage. And I know that might seem a little intense, like you're only a few dates in, but I was like, if these are the things that we both want and we both aspire to have out of a relationship, these are kind of like the things that I want to like have in line. And one of those things that seemed like in the moment a little silly to say, but looking back I realized was actually really important, was even like saying I love you yet, because we had only been dating for a few months at that point. And I was like, I don't want you to like say that and not really understand what you mean when you say it, or me say it and I don't know you. Mm-hmm. So it was one of those things. He said
like, to be really loved, you have to be really known. Like you've got to know someone's past, you've got to know someone's, you know, like, and I don't think you have to air all that out in the first date. Obviously, you should not.
And we didn't air it out either.
But
it was
he
just setting
like,
that guideline.
I think it was like date number 3. He was like, I don't want, because, you know, you're feeling all the things, whatever. You know, it's exciting. And then he's like, I don't want to, that those are words that I want to reserve for when we get to a point where it's like, okay, I know, you know. And I think at the end of the day, that is like how I knew. You would always tell me growing up, you would always say, times 10 it. You'd be like,
times 10 it.
Times 10 it. That was mom's meaning, like, if someone has a flaw, okay, then imagine that flaw times 10. That's what marriage is.
Yeah, and if you can,
it's like a magnifying. And if you can live with that,
what was my times 10?
I'm trying to think. I would say you were very argumentative and like not with me, but with other, like you were very feisty and like, but that was,
I never would have thought that.
But it was attractive.
I'll give you one so I was, one of my mentors was obviously, I sat under kind of Phil's mentorship, at least in like hunting and fishing, watching him interact. So I wasn't very romantic.
No, you were not.
Times 10 that. Our first year of marriage, remember the infamous birthday party?
Yeah, he forgets my 21st birthday, which is kind of a big birthday.
Yeah.
Forgets it, scrambles at the last minute to try to invite everybody to dinner at Olive Garden.
Like, you expected like a...
You said Olive Garden?
Yeah, I do.
At Olive Garden.
We love Olive Garden.
Yeah.
And so we show up at this table for 20 and it's me and Zach.
It was not a good night. Let me just tell you that. It was. She was so upset. Because in Jill's family, her expectation was that you celebrate things like birthdays and anniversaries and like special occasions.
Standard.
Like there's a holiday called Valentine's Day, and apparently you're supposed to like give your loved one something, things like that. We didn't in our family, not just the Robertson side, the Dasher side too. Like I just didn't grow up with that.
They didn't get serenaded on the mornings of their birthday.
Yeah.
You know, they didn't a candle with, you know. Yeah. But what's funny is, yes, I was raised that way in my family, but I also came out of a previous relationship from a guy that was very like romantic in that sense of like holidays and all of those things. And what's interesting about that, I just thought of this as you were talking about that. I traded that in for the opposite, but what you had, which was what I wanted from as young as I can remember. I remember I was a journaler. I loved to journal. And I would journal about you. I didn't know I was journaling about you, but I wanted a man that loved the Lord. I wanted a man that was going to lead me. I wanted a preacher. I literally used to say I want to be a preacher's wife. And that was the thing for me when we met, and we would sit on the top of the tables in the laundromat at college, and you would teach me the book of Romans.
Mm-hmm.
And I just remember looking at you and thinking, this is a man that loves the Lord. I can, whatever his times 10 are, because the way you chewed gum was so annoying to me, and it still is so annoying to me. But he loves Jesus, and I didn't even fully know what that meant, honestly.
Well, I didn't know what it meant. I mean, you're kind of imitating your mentors at that point. I was taking, because during that time period, I was taking a class, Survey of Romans was one of the classes I was in with Dr. Jimmy Allen. And so I was steep into the book of Romans, and I remember sitting there. Yeah.
But it was so, and it reminded me of you coming home from y'all's first date.
Yeah, that one.
I think when he took you and read, did you read Proverbs too, or some psalm or something? I can't remember.
I think both.
Something.
Yeah, he just we were on the parkway and just kind of talking about our relationship. And like he said, like, we weren't interested in just dating to date. I think that
which is wise.
Yeah. And I think that not being you don't want to be overly intense about it should be lighthearted, but at the same time,
there's still boundaries that you have because you're not, you're not
but
married.
At the same time, I wasn't at that point. I was done. I didn't want to date just to date. I wanted to date for the purpose of marriage and with an end in mind. And so I think, when you took me up on the parkway and I came home and I was like, Mom, he just read the Bible to me. And
I remember thinking, okay.
I do think, it took me a little bit to realize like when I knew, I would say it was about maybe a year before I knew that I was I wanted to marry him.
We didn't have those deeper conversations until later.
Yeah.
Which is also, I think, also wise. I don't think you should over spiritualize your spiritual intimacy with someone or too early in the relationship. I think
for sure.
Because
there's emotional and spiritual boundaries that you can cross.
He actually could have done better at that. Is the spiritual, because I didn't realize the power of spiritual vulnerability with someone else. That bonds you, you know what I mean? And sometimes when you're in that season, it can be a little bit intense, and I don't know.
You have to slow the progression of intimacy down so that you can see the red flags that maybe, and I think I think that's the thing. You let the relationship kind of maturate in a setting where there's other people involved, which y'all did that well, I thought. And but I think I do remember one moment that you were concerned about, is this the guy for me? And I don't know if you remember this, Jill. She called up and she was worried about his eschatology.
Oh yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And that's when Zach knew, I've raised my daughter right. No,
that's actually funny.
But what was beautiful about that is what I saw in that was your reverence for your father. You had such a reverence for you and your
which that's had to be another thing. I've had to okay.
We need to talk about
that's
that.
actually a good topic, because that's something that I know had to come up in your marriage.
In marriage, I obviously, backtrack. When I called you, that was one of the biggest fights.
Did you not know about this?
Was this from when we were at Liberty?
Yeah, we got one of the biggest fights we ever got in was on our interpretation of Revelation. And
how many
I remember
into that.
I know that's so pastor's kid of me. I remember driving home.
All the problems we could have.
I remember driving home from Liberty and Dawson's the type of guy that does not hold opinions with a clenched fist. He's very open-minded. Yeah. He's very willing to listen and learn. I'm probably more like, what are you talking about? Like,
My
this is
family's
like,
probably going to be looking at this like,
no, no. But I remember we got this big fight about Revelation, which is so silly and so silly. And I ended up calling dad and I was like, but in marriage, that's been like a thing is like, we don't have to go into this with like, you hold, like you were raised this way, you hold that. I was raised this way, I hold this. And like, we just don't, there's things like there's people that are like, we just don't talk about this. Like we don't talk about these things.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, at the end of the day, like what we've learned is we're creating our own family. Like we are our own unit now. Like I am like a man shall leave his father and wife, you know, like we're our own unit. And we get to have these conversations together. We get to study together and with an open mind of like, and praying like, God, would you reveal yourself to our relationship? So, and then at the end of the day, like there's just some things that aren't worth just getting in, you know what I mean?
I think y'all done a really good job at this. You have not, I think under your leadership, you haven't come to me with like, I don't support you guys financially. I mean, there's like y'all when y'all got married, it was like I was excited because one, I know you're a godly man, but two, I was also like Layla's off the payroll.
Cut off.
Like, Layla is off.
I mean, everything
payroll.
from car insurance to health insurance, like
Because this ties into a question too, like what does it look like when things get tough or things are hard? You guys right off the bat in your marriage face some financial back-to-back whammies.
just a few whammies.
So talk about what that was like coming from. So Layla, you know, you were daddy's first daughter and all of that. And then, you know, you have the engagement period, the wedding, which is so fun, honeymoon, all of that. But honeymoon ends and real life kicks in. And for y'all, that happened pretty
real
quickly.
soon. Yeah.
So talk about that a little bit.
Well, was it only like 2 months into us being married?
So we got home from our honeymoon, and then the Monday after we got home from our honeymoon, you left for a trip. And so that was just like the start of this like life of like a lot of travel, like a lot of chaos. But I think it wasn't 2 months. It was like a month.
It was the like first week of February after we got married that Layla, not on her, it wasn't her fault. The roads were iced over. She got in a
I'm used to
accident.
mountain weather where they salt the roads. They don't do that.
Yeah, she's on back roads in Nashville going to work. And she goes around a corner and just smacks the driver's side of her brand new
hit black eyes. My
Volkswagen.
car starts spinning, hits the tree,
Totals it.
Airbags come out. I'm freaking out. And I was actually on my way to a job, first day on the job, and it was like a nannying job, but they were paying me $30 an hour. Like it was like that type of Nashville, and they ended up firing me on my first day because I hit their tree in the front yard.
Oh my
like
God.
I don't, it was just
Like,
bad.
Yeah, sweetie, we're gonna go with someone
Well,
else.
they didn't fire me. She was just like, sorry, we ended up going with someone else because of how
someone who doesn't run into our trees.
I'm like, what in the world? Exactly. Well, then so that happens.
That is firing, by the way.
Yeah. Okay.
It's okay. It's okay.
You were fired.
Then that happens, and then a week later, I kid you not, a week later, his car transmission goes out.
Oh yeah,
So-
we're in the middle of nowhere,
Meridian,
Mississippi.
Mississippi.
Yeah,
We had some
and
lovely friends that came and picked us up.
That's right.
Shout out Reeves and Lydia.
Oh,
They
Reason
they drove
Video.
they drove 3 hours out of their way at like 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. So they didn't get there till probably
you have no car.
12:31.
No car.
Yeah.
And so
We're stuck at a gas station.
Sadie and Christian let us borrow their Jeep. So thankful for that.
Shout out
So
Sadie
sweet.
Robertson.
Shout out.
Or Sadie Huff,
Rob.
Christian
Yeah,
Huff.
Yeah.
They had an extra Jeep that they let us borrow, so that was a huge blessing. But we had no car. My phone broke week after that, so I had to get a new phone. I mean, I'm telling you, like it was like, I mean, you know, you get married. We're in a 1-bedroom apartment. That's expected, but all of that at once,
Well, I love this. I love y'all talking about this, but so many people listen to this and you hear this. They think you've got to have the perfect setup before you get married. You got to have your degree, you got to have your job locked in, you got to have the house, you got to have it all. And I'm not saying that's bad, but there is something to watching you two literally have to learn life together without this, oh, let daddy just write you a check or let us just come to your rescue. I believe there was something spiritual in you guys learning that together, walking through those moments, not having just this, you know, that is real life.
Yeah.
You know, we all have to face it at some point. And I remember moments of us watching you guys in it, and we're just like, we don't need to step in. We got to let them do it. But you want to step in some as a.
I didn't want to step in. I was like,
he offered some good, I called Dad and he gave me some good, like, car insurance advice, like stuff like that.
Yeah.
He was what
You
do
love
they
it.
call it?
Yeah.
A consultant.
I was a consultant on the side. Yeah.
But Dawson, you're so good at like,
Looking back, I'm like, how in the world did we come out on top better than before, like financially?
provided.
But I think like through that, the scriptures where it talks about like, why are you anxious and why are you worried? Like even you see the birds have a nest, the birds have food. It's like if they're taken care of, how much greater do I love and take care of you? And so like through that I was just like, Lord, I'm holding on to that because I have no idea how this is going to work out, but it ended up working out, and we were like felt more secure and safer coming out on the other end of it.
And we had I was going to say, we also laughed through it. I think that's like something that, we trusted God. And there were times where I was like, crying. But at the end of the day, like when you break down after totaling your car in the middle of Mississippi, like you can't do anything but just like, this is funny, it's like laughing together. And like that first few months, like they were hard, but they were so fun. Like 1-bedroom apartment, getting snow, like that type of stuff. But also we had a church community, like, thank the Lord, that really surrounded us during that time. And that's another thing I was going to say. Like, I think that one of the conversations we had talking about like conversations to have before, I guess, getting engaged was it's really important to me to have a community of people, not just family, like actually a church community that we are not just on a Sunday, like we show up on Sunday, but no, we're doing life with. And so when we got married, we were like, we made it a point to not miss church. Like we showed up even when he had been gone all week and gotten home late, and it felt like it would have been better to just stay home. Like we just showed up and consistently had people come around us during that time who not only like financially just like had us over for dinner, and
which
like,
is a big deal when you're
a free
when you're
meal,
newly married. I mean, because you think, somebody asked me out for dinner, or when we were young couple, if someone paid for my dinner, like at a restaurant,
huge.
I was like, you just bought my Chick-fil-A. Are you kidding me? You bought me Chick-fil-A. I'm like, that's
huge.
all, because
we did the Dave Ramsey envelope system. We were like, okay, that's we don't have to take that out of
They have a Dave Ramsey app now.
We try and do it every
that's what
month,
we
and then
use.
about 3 days in, we just like, falls to the wayside.
But I love that because I think sometimes, especially if you get on Instagram, and I'd love for you guys to talk about, I think Christian community, it's so important. And I'll say this is just as important as it is to surround yourself with Christian community words when you're newly married. It's just as important at 24 years in. And who you surround yourself with matters. Who you allow to speak into your marriage matters. Who you open up with about your marriage matters. And all of those conversations are so important. So if you are getting your imagination for what a marriage should look like, whether you're 24 years in or new, if your Instagram scroll is where you find that, you will feel like you have not arrived in any capacity. And I think about you guys specifically because there's so many young married couples that seem like they have it all at 20 something, what we have come to get at 40 something. And
they got more. I'm like,
they got more. I know. I'm looking at their houses and their cars and their setup, and I'm like, wow, these 20-year-olds have.
They got it set up.
What is there left to imagine? And so I would love for you guys to talk about that a little bit.
I mean, obviously comparison is real, and I think that it's probably comparison paired with discontentment is my number one struggle right now in this season of life. Like the constant, like looking at other people, looking at other people's careers. Like, why don't we have that? Also, I think that I am a sucker for like the big moments, meaning like I love a good vacation. Like I've been telling Dawson, we got to go to Italy or, France, take me to France, or like, or the big date nights or the holiday, the big gifts. Like I love that stuff. I'm not ashamed to say it. Okay. I like the big stuff like that, and I think that in marriage, like it's been hard because, you go from, being in a family where, we would take trips, and if I on holidays, if I like really wanted something, like most of the time for Christmas, I would get it. But like, we're in a 1-bedroom apartment now. And so now these seemingly like big moments, I don't actually think that I don't think that like one big moment a year makes a marriage, you know what I mean? Or one trip a year. Like, and I think that we've had a million tiny little moments, like cooking dinner together in our apartment, or like, and making it look cute with lighting a candle, like setting the atmosphere, or like setting the first fire in our apartment in the wintertime, or even just like things like going on walks together, like, or running, like we ran a half marathon together. And that was something that was so hard. But like our first year of marriage, Jocelyn was like, we should just train for this together and do it. And so all of these like little decisions and little tiny things that we've done, I feel like they mean that. I don't feel like I know it. They do mean something, and no, we can't take the Italy Rome trip right now. But I think that for a while there, and I'm like just now kind of coming out of this, I thought to have a like beautiful marriage, you've got to like make it look this way. Like you've got to have these spontaneous, like we've got to be traveling the world before we have kids. Like that's a big thing too, is like, make sure you travel the world before you have kids. Well, we ain't got money to travel the world before we have kids, but we do have time and, capability to plug into our local church or to like serve the people around us. So I think the million little mundane things have meant the world.
Comparison truly is the thief of joy.
It is.
Yeah.
And I think that, we didn't have Instagram as a comparison for our marriage early on. I do think that for your generation, that is a unique thing. And I think we've seen the data. I mean, there's been several books written on this. iGen by Dr. I can't remember her name, but she analyzes all the stats on mental health issues. It's an older book, but then you also have the what is it, Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt, who we had on the Unashamed podcast, which is fascinating. But so there's been a lot written on this, and it really is the thief of joy to compare yourself. But we did have our own version of that. Primarily, I think, kind of the community that we had surrounded ourselves with. There was a lot of comparison, passive aggressive comparison, and posturing up, and it was more cloaked in like the Christianese kind of spiritual.
Well, I feel like we're prone to feel like we have to put up a front, like we have this perfect marriage, or we have this perfect, home life or whatever. And to anyone listening to this, no, like we got in a family fight last night. When you get in this like comparative world where you feel like, oh, I've got to paint myself in the best light because somebody might.
Yeah.
Then you learn how to basically perform.
I think that's the big thing. Like for most of the questions that came in, this is at the core of all of them, is really what people are asking about is, how do I achieve real intimacy with my spouse? And so like your story, I'm actually proud of y'all's story, because it's not like this crazy testimony where you come in with all the, I mean, like you guys really are, and I think these stories should be shared. Unfortunately, we only highlight like the ones that are kind of like go from chaos to redemption. But there is the best testimony is the one that's just like, we've honestly just been walking with Jesus the whole time, and we've had our issues, but like, so your story to me is beautiful. But I think when you think about like people, there's a lot of people listening to this podcast, because one of the questions was, a lot of them were, what do I do with an unbelieving husband?
Unequally yoked.
Or my spouse is not a believer, or should I tell my spouse, their biblical roles, which you got to be careful with that. But so you can, I mean, there's a lot of marriages that are, there's a lot of kind of like tension and pain. And I think that question is, how do we get that oneness? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that is the question.
And I think that what you said is one of the keys to it. I don't know if you use the word mundane moments, but it's like, it's the small, incremental, moment by moment by moment by moment. It's Francis Schaeffer called it substantial sanctification. You're substantially healed moment by moment as you walk in the Spirit. And I think that calling of sanctification, or of what God's wanting to do in our healing, is something you said earlier, that you recognize at the beginning of your relationship, is in order to be loved, you got to be known. That's the thing. How can can we be known?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Peeling back those
Yeah.
those fig leaves, you know.
Yeah.
And one of the things I remember you telling me before y'all got married, and I don't know if this was in your engagement period or before pre-engagement, but I remember you talking about confessing to one another. And, you know, to be known, that is a key element,
Yeah.
I would say, of knowing someone is being able to confess, being able to repent. And for us early on in marriage,
Yeah.
that was not a part. We did not
No, we didn't do
offer
that.
a safe place for that.
Now, do y'all know this? There's a thing I read this a couple of years ago. There's like this, I don't even know what it is. It's like a background thing in New York City in Times Square, and you can like take a picture in it, and it'll put you in any place in the world.
Oh, weird.
That you can post it on your Instagram, and so it's like
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
in the whatever.
Eiffel Tower.
Yeah, I'm at the Eiffel Tower.
Yeah.
Click, you know, you got your selfie.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting to think about the comparison thing, and I think it relates to this, what you're talking about with confession. So used to, it was, I have to curate an online presence that makes everyone believe that my life is absolutely amazing. That was like probably like circa 2015, maybe. I don't know. Maybe I get the dates wrong. Now everybody knows that it's fake.
Yeah.
Like we all know that, right? We all know that the Instagram world is fake. We know that it's all the social media. We know it's not real. We know that people are performing, they're posturing up. We know that. And so now the game is like, it's just who can do that the best. It's a really strange phenomenon, but what it is, it's like a 2 or 3 layer deep level of, I'm just going to make this look good.
Yeah.
And so it's the whole catfish thing, right? You've seen the shows where the girl looks beautiful, and then like you meet her in person, and it's like a guy with a mustache.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's not the same person.
Yeah.
You know, but what it is can we make it look good on the surface? And I think that's what is producing the massive amount of anxiety in relationship structures. The anxiety comes from the fact that we've built a facade that we have to keep up and hold up, which we know is fake, and we're trying to keep this fake virtue signaling thing going, but it's not real, and the weight of carrying that is crushing us.
Yeah.
We experienced that to a lesser degree because we didn't have
Instagram, but we had developed that habit just, you know, it probably goes way back. Even I think that's a struggle. You grow up in the church, you learn habits in language and how you act, portraying yourself to look a certain way because that's the way you think you're supposed to look. And so you bring that, two people bring that into a marriage. And then also you know, maybe have a community where everybody's feeling the need to posture
and that
up.
happens in churches a lot. Like
Yeah.
I think a lot of churches struggle with let's act like it's like this piety that nobody can really come in and say, yeah, man, me and my wife, I cussed my wife out last night.
We just had a
it's
knockdown
crazy.
drag
Like,
out.
you need to be able to if you did that, you should. I hope, like I would hope, I want to be in a community where I could confess that sin.
Confess and come forward. I was going to say, you know what's crazy is I feel like, and you can tell me if I'm wrong on this, I feel like 95% of our fights happen on a Sunday morning or a Sunday afternoon, like on a Sunday morning on our way to like, and I'm leading worship at church. It's like so crazy. And then you show up to church and you're like, oh boy, like
I'm good,
you know. And I just think, you know, that's exhausting to live that way. And I don't know. I just think that at the end of the day, like you were saying, the process, I forgot what you were saying. I think we were talking about like handling conflict or whatever, but the process of becoming one, like we're pretty much still in that, you know, maybe we're near, I guess it's a never ending process.
We're still in that.
Yeah.
You physically become one,
Yeah.
like, right? At the you know, with the union.
Yes, but spiritually it's like,
but yeah, it's a process.
and my default is to defend, and my default is to self-protect because like I was going to say it might be an oldest child thing, but I think it's just a human condition thing. But it's like, I want to be seen even by him as this, like this way, you know? And when I fall short,
You want to be enough for him.
yeah, I want
You want him
yes.
to look at you and
Yep.
think, man, I'm enough.
Well, what makes it
Yeah.
even worse is how stubborn both of us are.
Yeah.
Like I'm a middle child, so I grew up always thinking I had to defend myself when I didn't, and like you saying, like being like almost having this like struggle of perfectionism, where you always think if there's something that not even you did wrong, but I'm like, I guess calling you out for, or like saying like, hey, let's.
I'm like, I'm not enough.
Yeah,
for
there's
him.
just something. There's just
I'm
something.
not perfect, so
Yeah.
I'm not enough. I'm terrible. Yeah.
And then it's like, oh, I'm not like saying you did this tally mark I have on a whiteboard. Like, oh, Layla messed up. Oh, there we go. There's
Yeah.
another one. All right,
Yeah.
that's 5 mistakes. It's like this. It's out of love in the same way that like when we mess up or if we do things out of line, like Christ calls us out for that, and like we're called to be called out by that by the church. It's like the same way where when one of us messes up, it's out of love. It's not like out of spite, like, oh, Layla messed up. Like now it's time for me to let her have it. It's like, no, like out of love, there's a correction that we both have to make.
I think I felt that same like performance thing early in our marriage, Jill. So I felt kind of like perfectionism, and I was listening. I don't remember what book this was, but I went through like this Francis Schaeffer period where I was like everything Schaeffer wrote. I think I've already quoted him in this podcast, and I got all his books back there on the shelf. But he was just super influential in shaping my view of the kingdom. And it was in one of the books where he said something like, how many people have given up on great marriages because they're not perfect marriages? And that hit me because in my mind, I had idolized marriage. I grew up in kind of church culture where I call it the sexual prosperity gospel, which is basically, hey, wait till you get married to have sex as a Christian. And then when you do, it's going to be the best
amazing.
thing. And so it's like, but it lifted it up in this weird way that was like, and even marriage, it was all like this thing, like this idol. And so when we went into marriage, I think we both kind of had the marriage itself as an idol.
Yeah.
And the problem when you do that is anything that you put in the place of God, here's the problem. Then you're putting the entire weight of reality on that thing. And so the problem with that is that the entire weight of reality is a lot heavier than the foundation of whatever you put it on if it's an idol, and it will crumble and it will crack and it will just collapse. And so we were in the midst of maybe a collapse of our marriage.
Yeah.
Honestly, if I'm looking back on it, I was just reminiscing about all of the, I kicked the door down one time because Jill locked herself in the bedroom.
Oh my goodness.
And then that's a whole story of how this is when we first got married. And then I had to replace the door, but I'm not a handyman. So I ended up buying like three doors from Home Depot. And like,
if that wasn't a lesson.
and I didn't have any, I was making $30,000 a year. So I'm like $600 into a door. So, what is that? Like 5% of my income is going into this door that I kicked. I'm like, oh, it was so horrible.
I threw a phone into the wall.
Oh, we got in a fight, yeah, and
he was traveling.
I'm traveling on a work trip, and I just hear we're fighting. I just hear, and conversation's over.
Man, I'm feeling pretty good about us right now.
So then I get home, and I'm like, and I can't call her back. I'm trying to call her back. There's no one's answering. I'm like, what in the world? I was like, so I get home that night, and there's a cordless phone sticking like out of the wall. So she had taken oh my gosh.
Listen,
this is embarrassing.
I get it honest because full transparency, like I'm reactive,
Yeah.
I just am. Like I get angry. I've got a little fight. I got a lot, like he knows, especially like the first, well, I don't even know if I could say, I don't know if I could say this. So she say it like the first few first few months of marriage, I was on birth control, and it was like,
crazy.
I
blame
like,
all my
times
problems
10.
on birth control.
Yeah. Blame all your problems on that. But all that to say, like, and I don't think I have no advice here. In fact, I am like, I want to know, how do you get to a point in your marriage where you can actually just like have a conversation through something without it escalating?
About it being,
Yeah.
Well, when you were talking about that period of our life, I almost could feel myself feeling that pressure again. And I did not realize it at the time. I didn't know it at the time. But being 24 years down the road, when I think back to that time period, to your point, we were holding something that we were incapable of holding. And what was happening, the things that needed to come out were not coming out because we had built up these walls around ourselves. Because I wanted Zach, to what you were saying before, I wanted Zach to think I was amazing. I was perfect. I wanted to be the fulfillment of every desire, of every dream. No woman in the world could, take my place, right?
Yeah.
And then he wanted to be that for me. He wanted to be the best husband, the best wife, the best sexual partner.
I didn't want to be the best wife.
Oh, I mean, yeah, sorry.
I never wanted that, actually.
Sorry.
I never wanted that.
No. But you know what I mean? The leader, the husband, the sexually, like all of these things, like he wanted to be all of this. And so what happens is you get in this process of performing. You don't realize you're performing because you just want them to think you're amazing. When what we really needed, one of my greatest struggles was I was a jealous person. I may have talked about this before on here, but I struggled with jealousy big time. And because I struggled with jealousy, that meant that he could never confess any type of struggle with lust with me. He could never do that. I was not a safe place for that, because if he confessed to that, and I remember I would accuse you of checking women out all the time, and he would be like, no. But I knew that he was. And he probably was, but that's beside the point.
I'll never say.
The point was, we were not a safe place for confession. And that's what we needed. That will crumble.
I think that's
your
the answer to your
marriage.
question, is you have to get to a place where it's safe to confess to one another. Because if you have to perform for somebody, you're going to end up resenting them. And it creates a ton of anxiety in the relationship, because now I can't be known by her, right? If I tell her this, then it's going to crush her. I've got to keep the facade up, and vice versa. And so for us, there's a thing called nihilism-induced conversion, which is a conversation that's happening right now about people getting to the end of nihilism and realizing nothing matters, and that is scary.
Yeah.
So I want to consider Jesus. That's kind of a version of that is what we got to. It was just like, this isn't working. I don't care. Like, fine, whatever. And so our actually breakthrough into intimacy was more out of me giving up and a desperation in a moment. Just like, you know what? If this is what it's going to be, then here's the truth. Take it or leave it.
Whoever loses his life will find it.
Yeah. And I think happened.
I think it started individually first. It's like God started working on me individually.
We're talking seven years in our marriage.
Oh yeah, this is not like
this is year 7.
Yeah.
This isn't like day 1. We've been married 7 years. Had a life together.
7 years, I think, before the first time we had an honest confession session with each other.
Wow.
And it changed. And it actually, now that I'm thinking about it, it didn't just change the trajectory of our marriage. It changed the trajectory of our family. It actually changed the trajectory of our ministry, of our career. It changed. That was the moment. If I'm thinking about everything that we've gone through with church hurt and relationship difficulties and getting out of community, we needed to get out of all of that, and the healing and what we're experiencing now in our church, like that started in that one moment. Actually, now that I think about it, it was in a moment of confession. I think that's that James 5 passage. It's so powerful that if you confess your sins to one another, you will be healed. That's the promise of Scripture. So I think confession's got to be at the core of it, because in confession, what you're doing is you're essentially, there's that story in Genesis 1-3 about Adam and Eve covering up with fig leaves. Right? They cover up their nakedness. Who told you were naked? The Lord said. Well, we ran and hid because we were naked. We didn't want anybody to see us. And the Lord's like, well, who told you that? Did you eat from the tree I told you not to eat of? And then they start,
the blame game
back.
I was like, no, it was her, and she's like, oh no, it was the snake.
Which
and
we know a thing or two about the blame game.
Yeah,
but that fig leaf though is that's a metaphor for our feeble and futile attempts to cover up so that we won't be seen. So the idea is that Adam and Eve, they covered up their nakedness because they did not want to be seen. They did not want to be known. Yeah. And the problem with that is that the covering is not durable. The fig leaf, we used to have a fig tree in our backyard in Louisiana, and it's just like leaves. Yeah. And the problem with them is they're very fragile, and over time they dry out and get really crumbly. And so if you're wearing a garment made of fig leaf, if your goal is to cover up your nakedness, imagine the anxiety that you're going to feel at every move. I might move the wrong way, rip my fig leaf covering, and everybody's going to see my stuff. I mean, that's the picture.
The shame's
right?
like highlighted.
Well, and if you're never known, you never experience that feeling of being loved and known, even in the darkest place, then all you're able to do at that point to keep your marriage together is to keep finding things that are going to bring fulfill. Well, what if I get this new house, or maybe if we get this car, or maybe if we get this job, or maybe if he makes this amount of money. You're just constantly trying to consume things to make your marriage what you think it needs to be.
But what it needs to be is you need to be known and you need to be seen. And so the covering, what happens in Genesis is that the Lord himself comes in and he says, okay, first of all, your covering's not durable.
Yeah.
And it's going to cause you a lot of anxiety, right? Because you're going to be, and so the Lord says, take that off and I'm going to provide a more durable covering, which is foreshadowing of Jesus himself covering us. He kills the animal, makes a skin covering. But when he's doing that, what the gospel is this. The gospel is that Christ sees us in our nakedness and he says, I know you think it's bad, but it's actually much, much worse. And that's where I died for you. I see you there. I'm there. I'm right here. I'm present. And it reminds me of a conversation I had with one of my friends. I'll just call him Dr. Ryan because he may not want me to say his name and endorse him on the podcast, but if he does listen to this sometimes. But he does a therapy called emotionally focused therapy. And we had this incredible conversation several years ago about this type of therapy that he was into. And he was telling me that he takes the couple, like a high risk couple. These are like couples that are on the brink of divorce. Like they're not going to make it. These high risk couples, and they go through these series of like these repair sessions of their relationship. And the goal is to get the couple to a place where they can actually see each other in their own like junk, like the worst part of themselves, like that the fig leaf is stripped back. And if they can get the couple to that place, and I said, and then find affirmation. The word's not affirmation. He said the word is presence.
Yeah.
If I can see Jill in her worst, and she knows that I've seen her in her worst, and I don't leave, then there's a bond that's broken in that type of connection. We were made for connection. And there's a bond created there that is unbreakable. And I was like, Ryan, that's the gospel. He said, exactly. That's the gospel.
Died for you at just the right time.
At our rehearsal dinner, I don't know if y'all remember this, but you said what were you reading? You were reading some passage of scripture.
It was the wedding feast.
Yeah, the wedding feast. And you literally were making the entire point that like what we're about to enter into is just a small picture of who God is to us, like the entire point. You know what I mean?
I think
what a gift of marriage to like be a tangible example of like, I'm going to love you there. I'm not going to leave, no matter what. And that's like, I guess, in the first year and a half of marriage and what little experience we have, that's just what it's been. It's been a daily like, all right, well, this is who I am. Okay, wait, I guess I don't have to hide. Okay, are you going to love me? Are you sure? Like, it's just this like messy process. But
I think like what's so cool is like you see the fig tree specifically throughout all of the scriptures. And like I was reading the other day in John 1 and 2, like when Jesus was calling his disciples, he called Philip, and Philip's like, all right, I gotta go find Nathaniel. And when he goes and runs to Nathaniel, he's like we found the Christ, like the coming Messiah. He's gonna change the world for us. Like when Jesus meets Nathaniel, he's like, before you even saw me, I saw you, and I knew you when you were sitting underneath the fig tree. And Nathaniel was thought it was like, he was just kind of blown back by it. And Jesus like, you think that's great, and you believe that I'm the Messiah because I said that, you're going to see so much greater, so many more greater things than that. Like you're going to see heaven opened up and angels ascending and descending upon heaven.
So the thing is like, he already sees us before we even he already knows what's underneath the fig leaves.
That's the prodigal son
he knows.
right?
He already knows. What actually changes is we get to participate in the vulnerability and we get to participate in the freedom. It's not like you can hide from God, you know?
We go back to the Garden of Eden when he says, "Where are you?" to Adam and Eve. It wasn't because he didn't physically know where their location was. He wanted them to admit where they were, because he knew if they admitted, "Hey, we're hiding from you," you confess, you admit anything, you bring it out into the light. God's like, I can take that. I can handle that. I can cover that. And so I know we're running out of time, but we're rooting for you guys. We love you guys. Seeing you guys, I feel like, steps ahead of where we were at your age. I do take it back to what you said, that shift in our marriage of making confession a part of our marriage. And then as we were parenting our kids, making that a part of your lives. Because I remember a pivotal moment in your life, Layla. You made some stupid decisions. Shocker. Kids are going to do that, right? And our response was not, "Oh my gosh, we're embarrassed. We've got to figure out a way to," our response was, "No, we bring it all out to the light.
We don't expose it. It wasn't about protecting reputations. Which, if you think about it, infidelity is such a big thing in marriages. I mean, it just is. I mean, half of marriages end in divorce. And I think about Al and Lisa, my cousin, who's on Unashamed podcast with me. They had marital infidelity. Lisa cheated on Al, and it was a brutal betrayal of the marriage. This is going back, 20 years ago. And now when I look at Al and Lisa, if you said, "Hey, is there a couple you can point us to that we could model our marriage after?" I'd be like, "Oh, you need to meet with Al and Lisa." I mean, I've recommended so many people to them. So but then there's other couples that we've been really close friends with that have had marital affairs, and I can't say the same for them. And you think, well, what is the difference? Why did Al and Lisa, and they're very open about this, which is the point. Yeah. Why did they find such healing? Because they detonated their own time bomb. I got that line from Al.
Came out from hiding.
They came out of hiding. They confessed it. There's literally open book.
They detonated their own time bomb.
Al says it all the time. It's actually very, almost like it's so, and they're and me and Jill, if we ever hit a serious wall in our marriage, that's the first place I'm going is to meet with Al and Lisa, because I've watched how God has healed their marriage, and now they have such a strong connection with the Lord and with each other. And I think that all the questions that you guys ask, particularly I keep thinking about that one, what do I do with an unbelieving spouse? I think the key is that you have to love them like Christ loved you. It's the Romans 5 passage. While we were enemies, while we were sinners. And it's not about you fixing anybody and manufacturing an outcome. The same thing goes to should I tell my spouse and make sure they understand their roles? No. You should understand your role, and you should embody that. And that, I mean, that's Christ. If you think about how Christ loved us, while we were enemies, He died for us. And so I think that's the picture that we're trying to get to, is to embody a spirit of how can I fully. And I should say this. Maybe there is a time to have discussion on things that unmet expectations. You should deal with stuff. I'm not saying that. But
well, that is part of a spirit of confession. That is.
But you got to start with you. And as my point, I can't fix Jill, and she can't fix me. Now, and I have to take my own junk before the Lord and my own confession. And I think that what I've seen is my willingness and humility to confess my own sin has actually, that's done more to shape Jill than anything else I've ever done. And vice versa. When she's tried to tell me what I'm doing wrong and tried to fix me, that last night did not work. She gave me her critique of me, and I was like,
well, me and Mom both did.
Y'all did. Y'all were very disrespectful. But whatever, when she embodies humility and confession, then it's just then I'm like, it disarms me. So I think it's walking in a spirit of confession of your own stuff will do more to shape your marriage into a godly marriage than anything else you can do. And there's all degrees of that type of confession, but we need to get to a place where we can actually live that out.
Yeah. That's good. Thank y'all.
Thank y'all for coming on.
Yeah. It's good to be here. Love you guys.
Love y'all.